before rappers were selling out stadiums, before hip-hop became the single most powerful cultural force on earth, there was a movie critics deemed too violent, too vulgar, too over the top to even be taken seriously. That movie? The 1983 Brian De Palma classic, Scarface. Now here's the twist. The very film that Hollywood critics wrote off as trash ended up becoming hip-hop's favorite scripture. But why? Why did Tony Montana, a Cuban immigrant played by an Italian-American actor with an accent thicker than Domino's pizza dough, become rap's unofficial mascot? Why do recording studios still have Scarface posters plastered all over the walls like they're holy relics? Why do rappers like Nas, Jay-Z, Rick Ross keep circling back to this 3-hour blood-soaked gangster epic from 1983? And maybe, the most strangest question of all, what does this cautionary tale of excess and downfall actually say about hip-hop's own story? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know why Scarface didn't just resonate with rap. It practically became rap's autobiography. Real quick, if you're enjoying the content, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps us small channels out. Now, let's get into it. When Scarface dropped in December of '83, critics act like they just watched a 3-hour fever dream gone completely wrong. They complained about the endless F-bombs. And fun fact, Scarface set the record for most F-bombs dropped in one film at over 200 times. They called Al Pacino's performance cartoonish. Some said the violence even made it practically unwatchable. But while Hollywood elites was clutching their pearls, hip-hop kids leaned in. Why? Because hip-hop's always had a soft spot for the underdog, the outcast that the world tries to dismiss. And Tony Montana was exactly that. And like hip-hop itself, Scarface went from being dismissed as too much to being impossible to ignore. Critics eventually changed their tune, but rappers were already quoting it like gospel. Now, Tony Montana starts with nothing. Literally nothing. He's scrubbing dishes in a Miami kitchen, broke, invisible, another immigrant just hustling to survive. Then he flips his grind, brick by brick, deal by deal, until he builds an empire. Sound familiar? That's basically hip-hop in a nutshell. Rappers have been writing those same rags to riches stories, but with mixtapes instead of kilos, stages instead of street corners. However, here's the kicker. Scarface isn't just about winning. It's about the cost of ambition, the paranoia, the betrayal, the self-destruction. And that duality, the come up and the crash, is exactly what hip-hop, especially in the 90s, couldn't stop rapping about. That's why rappers like Kool G Rap, Nas, Biggie, they didn't just look at Tony as a character. No, they seen him as a metaphor, a distorted reflection of what chasing the American dream feels like when you're not invited through the front door. Now let's be real. Tony Montana is probably the most quoted gangster in cinema history.
All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them for no one.
Don't get high on your own supply.
And of course,
say hello to my little friend!
Rappers didn't just quote these lines. They sampled them. They spliced them into mixtapes, built skits, intros, entire songs around them. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite Tony Montana quote is. Now, by the time the 90s rolled around, quoting Scarface in a verse was basically like quoting Shakespeare. Ah yes, the blimp. The glowing prophecy floating across the Miami night sky. The world is yours. On the surface, just neon advertising. But for rappers, it was scripture. Nas immortalized it on one of his greatest tracks. Officer William Roberts, Rick Ross, practically based his whole rap persona around it. Countless rappers tattooed it, wore it, they lived it. However, here's the plot twist people don't like to talk about. When Tony stares at that blimp, his world is already falling apart. His empire he built is now cracking beneath his feet. Hip-hop understood that duality. The blimp isn't just a promise, it's a warning. The world is yours, but only if you can survive holding it. Now here's a fun little fact. Without hip-hop, Scarface would have just fell into cult obscurity. In 2003, 20 years after the film dropped, Def Jam released music inspired by Scarface. That's not just nostalgia, that's cultural resurrection. MTV Cribs episodes in the early 2000s looked like Tony Montana fan clubs. Posters, white suits, fountains. Some rappers styled their entire mansion like Tony's palace. And Al Pacino himself admitted it. Hip-hop is what kept Scarface alive. The Academy didn't hand him an Oscar for it, but hip-hop handed him immortality. Here's something that critics missed. Tony wasn't the old-school Italian gangster that audience was accustomed to. He was Cuban, an immigrant, an outsider fighting just to be seen. Sound familiar? Black and Latino artists coming up in the 80s and 90s know that story well. Locked out of mainstream America, they carved their own empires. From mixtapes, to labels, to billion-dollar brands. And like I always say, America loves Black and Latino culture, but America hates Black and Latino people. And for lack of better words, that shit sucks. Why did Scarface visuals slip so perfectly into hip-hop? First, their spectacle. The gold tubs, the palatial desk, the mountain of cash. It looked like a rap video before rap even had a budget. Second, the myth. Tony wasn't just a hustler. He was a king without a crown. And hip-hop always loved kings. And third, code. Loyalty, betrayal, ambition, don't get high on your own supply, becomes as sacred as the 10 crack commandments. In other words, Scarface wasn't just a movie. It was already a hip-hop album. Hollywood just didn't know it yet. Here's the contradiction, though, that keeps Scarface alive. It's a movie about ambition giving you everything and then taking it all away. Hip-hop thrives on that tension. The verses celebrate the come-up, but also warn about the downfall. Biggie's 10 crack commandments could have been ripped straight from Tony's mistakes. That's why 40 years later, rappers are still quoting it, because the myth never ends. It just rewrites itself for newer generations. Even Al Pacino said it, hip-hop kept the movie alive. Think about it, an Oscar-winning legend thanking rappers for preserving one of his most infamous roles. That's not just influence, that's ownership. Hip-hop didn't just borrow Scarface, hip-hop claimed Scarface. So why does Scarface still resonate in 2025? Because hip-hop is still wrestling with those same questions. How far will ambition actually take you? And what's the price you'll have to pay? For every artist like Tony in his prime, there's the ghost of Tony in that last scene. Alone, paranoid, drowning in his own excess. That's the genius of Scarface. It's not just a gangster flick. It's a hip-hop parable. The rise, the fall. What goes up must come down. And an eternal reminder that the crown always comes with a cost. So next time you hear a rapper quoting Tony Montana or see that red and black poster in a studio, remember, it's not just about a movie. It's about ambition, the struggle, and the eternal reminder that the world might be yours, but only if you can survive holding it. Thanks for watching.